guys, it's Ghosdee. Welcome back to my channel, and this week I'm going to be talking about The Invisible Man. I'm going to start a new thing on my channel where I'm going to be revisiting movies that I've only watched once just to see how I feel about it now. I like to think that I have a new pair of eyes for horror now that I'm really into analyzing it, watching it, understanding it, and film in general. I like revisiting movies that I haven't seen in a while or movies that I didn't really pay attention to. I wanted to start with The Invisible Man because I liked it when I saw it, but I wasn't in love with it, and I really wanted to be in love with it. So here was my chance to take another stab to fall in love with this movie because I know so many people think it's one of the best movies ever, and I just didn't see that when I first saw it. It was actually one of the last movies I saw in theaters before the pandemic, and I'm actually really glad that I got to see this one in theaters because the theater experience for this one is definitely the best, mostly because of the sound design. It just fits perfectly for the tone and the mood and for what our protagonist is going through, and I really appreciated that. The movie opens with a very beautiful nighttime ocean crashing against the shore. I fucking love that shit. We cut to Elizabeth Moss' character, Cecilia. First of all, Elizabeth Moss is a great actress. She's amazing in everything I've seen her in. Her acting skills definitely show out in this intro where she is attempting to leave her husband. We later find out that he's a manipulative, controlling, abusive asshole, so good for her. So she's attempting to leave him, and the first, I don't even know, maybe 5 to 7 minutes of this movie is silence because she's trying to be silent, and I thought that was just so perfect and on point, and I'm just obsessed with this intro. It's just so good. It just sets up the movie and the anxiety that we are to feel through Cecilia through this whole movie. We get that in the intro. We learn the stakes of her situation. There's no reason not to empathize with her throughout the whole movie because we see the fear in her in this intro. She's attempting to escape and be really quiet. That is ruined when the dog hits the car and sets the car alarm off. And you can tell that Cecilia actually spent time planning this escape, just the way that she goes about everything. So to see this plan be ruined by the cute, very cute dog Zeus, when Adrian wakes up, she's Cecilia's booking it, and she reaches this wall, which shows us there's so many things in this movie that tell us how fucking crazy Adrian is and how he really wanted to create a prison for Cecilia, to the point their home is not only far away from the city, completely far away from the city, but there's cement walls surrounding the home. That home is a prison for her. She jumps over the wall and is waiting for who we find out is her sister to pick her up. When she gets in the car, we get our first jump scare. I actually really like that this movie had jump scares because I feel like a lot of people don't like them because they think that they're cheap and they're lazy, and it's when they're done well, they're done well. So this jump scare is Adrian. We see the camera is focusing on the conversation between Cecilia and her sister, but we can see him in the background running, and then he just runs up to the car. I remember when I first saw him bust that window, I was like, oh, he's crazy. She does escape. We skip to 2 weeks later, and Cecilia is staying with a family friend, James, who's a cop. He's personally my favorite character, mostly because he is so supportive of Cecilia. Even when he doesn't completely understand what she's going through, he tries to pretty much throughout the whole movie. And I think there's only one time where he doubts her, and that's mostly because he had no choice to. He and his daughter were being affected, and I think that is why he was all right, Cecilia, you need to chill the fuck out. I didn't even expect him to be involved in the resolution of the film, but he was, and I was that's a good friend. And also there was no romantic hinting, straight platonic. This movie displays his relationship with his daughter a lot, which I think is adorable. He's such a good dad. All the comments he says towards her, he just really wants to be a good dad to her. So yeah, 2 weeks later, Cecilia is still feeling the anxiety of her abusive ex, Adrian, and she feels that he's still around, that he's gonna find her. And we later find out that he quite literally told her that he would always find her and that he would be standing in front of her and wouldn't even see it. So it makes sense to me as to why she's still fearing her life, knowing that he's still out there. James is trying to motivate her to like leave the home. It's not happening. She's still really anxious. It cuts to her. She's Googling like, how do you know if somebody's stalking you? Things like that. She's still struggling. But we immediately find out that Adrian killed himself. Cecilia is relieved, but still on edge. As would anybody with anxiety, it doesn't go over overnight. When he dies, she learns from his brother that she inherited $5 million. She's gonna receive this money by getting $100,000 deposited to her bank account every single month for the next 5 years. She's like, I'm fucking set, literally. And we actually get to spend some time with Cecilia being happy. It doesn't last long, but she's happy. She's celebrating with James. She offers to pay for tuition for Sydney to go to school. That whole like moment, so genuine, so beautiful. I just love seeing shit like that. I just like anything that makes me like the characters more. Obviously, we as an audience knows this is all a part of Adrian's manipulation. And that's one thing that I did like about this movie. They don't play with him being the villain. Every time he is on screen, he's manipulating a situation. I'll speak more on that when I get to the final scene where he's actually interacting with her. Now I can say the pacing of this movie is a lot for me. And it's crazy because I don't mind long movies. Midsommar is literally one of my favorite movies and it's a long movie. But this movie gets a little boring for me at times, and that's something I didn't understand my first watch, but I understand now. It mostly has to do with the fact that Adrian really takes his time with trying to make her trip balls. Realistically, it would probably take time to make somebody trip balls, so I understand that. I just like, you know, I was bored. It doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I just like that part I really struggled with. The middle part of the movie is him making her go insane by doing random shit around the house, opening doors, and she doesn't really understand what's happening. She just thinks it's in her mind. She doesn't really know what to believe. There's this scene that's really creepy where he like takes pictures of her in bed and he like pulls the covers off. She wakes up and sees a figure, which I really like the scare because I first saw a scare like this in Hereditary and I thought it was so genius when Peter in Hereditary wakes up and sees what he think is like Charlie, but it's just like a basketball in a chair. And I was like, man, yeah, everybody's woken up in the middle of the night and saw some clothes or saw some things and thought it was a human. In this movie, Cecilia wakes up in the middle of the night and sees what she thinks is like the Invisible Man. It's actually a nod to the OG Invisible Man. So Cecilia wakes up and moves around and tries to see what's happening and sees footprints on these sheets and calls James in. And it's like, she tells him she saw it. And he's like, look, do not let him win. It's so interesting because usually in these movies where there's a character that is going mad, every character is like, you're crazy. But James, he just wants her to be better. He doesn't want to discredit her feelings. He doesn't quite understand it, but he doesn't want to discredit what she's feeling. And I think that's so important. I think that's very real. After that, Cecilia is actually able to confirm that Adrian is fucking with her. So she goes to this job interview. Her portfolio is missing. She pretty much loses it after that and then she passes out. The hospital calls her and tells her that she probably passed out because of the high dosage of this medicine she had in her body. And she's like, what? And then she sees the pill bottle in the bathroom and she's like, this is the pill bottle I lost the night that I ran away from Adrian. Also, I used this to drug him. So she knows that he is watching her. With this information, she immediately goes to his brother, like, okay, what's up? He's alive. I fucking know he's alive. And of course the brother's like, no, he's not. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. I love that James is there. And James is like, no, my friend is feeling a certain way and you need to talk. I love him so much. He's so great. That was a bust, basically. Like, nobody believes her that Adrian is actually dead. And her like final hope to get somebody to understand her, she reaches out to her sister. And her sister is like, oh yeah, that was such a great email you sent me. And Cecilia's like, what are you talking about? Amelia's like, you sent me this email basically bashing her. Cecilia's like, fuck, like Adrian's trying to ruin the relationships in my life. She's hopeless. But Sydney tries to comfort Cecilia, mentions that they should have a girl night. And then here comes fucking Adrian ass. He punches Sydney and makes it look like it was Cecilia's fault. Obviously, James is like, well, this is my teenage daughter. I need to prioritize her. So that leaves Cecilia alone as Adrian attended. And she's like, well, fuck this. I'm gonna fucking fight you. That's what she does. She tries to fight him. We get like a little cat and mouse scene, and we get our second jump scare. She spends time in the attic where she sees a knife that he grabbed earlier in the movie, her portfolio. I think there was something else that she saw. As she's like looking outside the attic, she's like, she can feel him there. She pours like paint on his face, and we get this crazy jump scare with this crazy sound effect. I can't even explain this sound effect, but it's like terror. She's able to escape him, and she gets like a lift all the way to the home. Now, this is where the movie really starts to drag for me. She goes back to the home, confirms that there's this invisible suit. I feel like at this point, this scene is so pointless. It makes sense in the end, but like, she grabs the second suit, because apparently there's two suits, and hides it, and you're like, bitch, why don't you just fucking take it? But she hides it, and obviously Adrian's like, well, I know you're here, and he chases her, and they do the whole thing again. She's able to escape him again, and she calls her sister like, you need to meet me, and I need to talk to you. And she said that she had proof of Adrian walking around here in a fucking invisible suit. She meets with her sister, and this is where the movie picks up a little bit for me again, because they're trying to have a conversation and they're being honest. The camera is focused on her sister, and you just see her sister, like, her eyes go from looking at Cecilia to looking next to Cecilia, and we see a knife, and that knife, just mid-air knife, cuts her sister's throat in half, and then the knife is just thrown in Cecilia's hand. When I first saw this film, I didn't know that I was gonna get great kills. I was like, oh, we're just gonna get some spooks and a visible man walking around being spooky. But that's the shit I do fucking like. Cecilia's thrown in psychiatric care. They sedate her, and she's just like, he's here. She eventually has a meeting with his brother where he's like, so you can only have the money if you don't break the law. You just broke the law. So here's how we can fix this. I think I forgot to mention, but the doctors actually do let her know that she's pregnant. I'm pretty sure they let her know she's pregnant before she has a conversation with the brother. And the brother's basically like, if you have his baby, everything will be fine. Cecilia decides to just fucking kill the baby because she knows that like he wants this baby more than anything. Attempting to kill the baby brought him to her, so she's trying to like kill him, and she actually gets a few jabs in, but the fucking security guard crew come in and they're like, oh my god, and she's like, dude, he's here. He swipes that whole team out, just fucking swipes it out. That was some other good shit that I wasn't expecting. How did I forget to mention like the way that this movie plays with perspective when we're seeing things through Adrian, especially in the beginning where he's trying to scare Cecilia, like the way the camera moves and everything. I think that was just such a great way to try and keep this movie interesting and it not be like the same of like, oh, a chair move. Putting us in the eyes of the stalker. Back to the plot. He swiped out the security team and they end up in the parking lot, and I feel like there was another cop there. I'm getting hazy because again, this movie drags for me when there's at this point. I did like all the security guard kills, but it drags for me in the parking lot scene because I quite honestly am just over Adrian winning. I don't remember what happens, but I do know Cecilia calls James like, Sydney's in danger. And then we cut to Sydney being in danger. James is like, oh my god, what the fuck? They're trying to like wrestle with him. And then Cecilia comes and shoots him. And they reveal the mask. And oh my god, it's the brother. It's not Adrian. The brother was killed the whole time. Yeah. Didn't believe that. I didn't believe it the first time I saw it. And this time, I was like, this is still such a lame plot twist. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know if they really wanted us to believe that this was the ending of the movie. But I saw that and I was like, there's no way that the brother was behind all of this. No way. And Cecilia is like, That's not the case. They say that the brother like kidnapped Adrian and was walking around in the suit. He had no motivation, especially because Cecilia was getting all this money. Like, it literally made no sense. Knowing that he's alive, Cecilia calls him and I guess agrees to meet with him. So she does. This is where we really get to see like how manipulative this dude is. This is the way he talks to her, like talks down to her, the things he says. We see that James is in the car listening, so we assume that Cecilia's trying to get like a confession, because she does say like, why don't you just confess that you did all this? And he refuses to admit that. And she's like, and the only way that we're gonna work out is if you don't lie to me. And he's like, I'm not lying. And he's just so good. He's so good at like just lying. He's so good at it. It's crazy. Like, that dude is fucking insane. Cecilia has a little bit of a breakdown. Adrian like fakes comforts her. He gaslights her. That's what he does. She's like, okay, you're right, I'm gonna clean myself up, and leaves. And then he slices her throat. And we're like, that bitch, no she didn't. No she didn't just fake that whole breakdown just to find an excuse to leave, put on the suit she hid an hour earlier in the movie. That's what I meant. A thing happened that I didn't really understand, because she hit the suit. It's like, did she intend to hide the suit to pop up? I don't know. Because I feel like she should have just took it with her the first time. But it worked out for this ending, because she went in, got that suit. Also, like, why did Adrian not know that his second suit was missing? Plot holes. It happens, I guess. But she kills him. And James hears that on the recording. And then she calls 911 to pretend to be sad about it, and gets, oh my god, he killed himself. She leaves, and James says like, did you actually want to get a confession? And she was like, I did, but he killed himself. The interaction, the faces that they exchange, you can tell that James is like, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna let her do her, because this is the only way she was gonna escape it. Even if he did confess and go to jail, she probably would still not feel comfortable. Like, that nigga need to be dead, and I'm not even mad. Good for her. The ending of this movie did so much for me, because I got so bored in the middle, but the ending really saved it for me. Did it change my rating rewatching it? Honestly, I might add a ½ star. I think I'm just gonna stick to the 4 stars, because again, I think it's a great movie. It's well made. I understand why people love it the way they do. It just doesn't resonate with me as much as I wanted it to, but that's not a bad thing. I do recommend this movie for sure. It's such a good, like, intense anxiety thriller, and I think it's a good movie for people that want to watch something that's a little bit more creepy but don't want to be scared. And Lee Whannell is so talented. His directing is just amazing. Writing is questionable, but his directing is amazing, and he has an apparent style as far as like set design and like tone is so apparent between this film and Upgrade, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from him. I really want him to build something on his own, kind of like how James Wan has with the Conjuring universe. James Wan is seen as like the master of like supernatural jump scare horror, and if Lee Whannell is going to be seen as like the master of like sci-fi tech horror, I'm here for it. Thanks guys for watching this video. If you liked it, you can give it a thumbs up, and be sure to subscribe to my channel. You can always hit the bell to be notified whenever I release new content. Follow me on social media. I'm on Letterboxd at Ghosdee, Twitter at Ghosdee, and Instagram at Disco Llama. Thanks. I'll see you in the next video.